Dr. Miller here with a, I love responding to questions, and I find that I don't enjoy typing very much. Well, that's not true. I don't mind it. How's that? But I rather have a video response. Sorry, I'm moving around here. To a question that I got. I printed it off here from somebody who had read my book. And if you're not aware, I did write a book. It's called Foundational Weight Training. I would recommend you don't buy it. That sounds like a ringing endorsement, right? The author's like, don't buy my book. The reason is the information in that book is outdated, at least some of it. And I'm working on the second edition, and I should have that book out hopefully next month. That's the hope. So I got to get a copy edited. And the first time I published it, I was just on a wing and a prayer, and just kind of threw it together. It was fun. That seemed fun. It was fun. And trying to polish it up a little bit, certainly update it with better information. So if you're interested in that, hang on, and I'll make an announcement when that book's out. But I had a gentleman that wrote me some really good questions, and I thought I'd respond to those questions. And I think they cover a lot of topics that many people have questions about. And so I'm going to kind of summarize some of his questions here and respond to them. So hope you find this valuable. By the way, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Check out all the videos I have on book reviews, journal clubs, where the information is expanding all the time. Occasional diet rant, or rambling on about something, or questions like this I think are helpful. If you're interested in asking questions, I do have a Patreon page. Part of it, and I'm pretty cheap, so $3 a month, and you can ask me questions, all the questions you want, and I'll probably put them. I won't name you unless you want to be named. Respond to them via video, and for the kind of edification of everybody. All right. So the question was in relation to training theory. So why train in smaller bites? In other words, why train a couple times a week with less of an attack on volume or intensity? In other words, why not just have really hard sessions and then recover, longer? So why not have a big bolus of stimulus, basically? We could define what that is. It could be, for in the bodybuilding world, a whole bunch of volume, right? When I just crush your chest and triceps one day with 30 sets. And, well, people have done that. That's conventional bodybuilding. Why not do it with strength work? Why not just destroy? And it's a good question. Why take smaller bites? Why not just crush? And as the question was asked, why not lather, rinse, repeat? It's a good way of putting it. The reason is if there's a balance between what's the fitness fatigue model. There's a balance between stimulus and recovery. There's a balance between fatigue and stimulus. So if you have a stimulus that's so high and so aggressive in a session, you do 30 sets, it's going to require a lot of time to recover. The fatigue that's been accrued is the problem. And so while you will gain some fitness gains, because the fatigue was so high, it's going to take longer for that fatigue to go away, and in so doing, you're going to start to lose fitness gains as well. If you took smaller bites, essentially, and pushed hard and then left some in the tank, not going to complete another disaster, in terms of fatigue, not disaster, but, you're not going to the edge, then you can come back and train again the same week. Maybe even the same training session, depending on the level of the person. And so over time, the accumulated volume from doing that, even though, one session of 30 sets, if you can do a total of 40 sets per week now, I'm just using an example. If you can do, that's a lot of sets, but if you can do 40 sets a week on a particular body part as opposed to 30, because 30s was all you could give. Like you just hit the wall. There was nothing more you can give. And it took forever to recover. In fact, you might even do 30 sets. It might take you 7 to 8 days to recover, let's say, from that. Well, if you do twice a week, and getting 20 sets, less volume per session, though, that's going to equate to, at least within a time frame of a week, 40 sets versus 30. And if it takes you longer to recover from those 30 sets in that one devastating workout, then in fact it could take you even longer to recover. And over the course of a year, you are losing even more volume. Okay, now I'm using a pretty extreme example, at least for most, of the amount of sets that you're doing for bodybuilding training. The same could apply to strength work. How many sets can you really do at a heavy load? Like if you took 85%, and let's say you capped it at 3 reps, the old 5x5 programming, right? Go to 85% and get, crush your soul. Even then, I haven't met anybody that can maintain a true 85% of 1RM 5x5, right? Because that's you're hugging max there when you get up to 5 for a strong person. I'm talking about a strength trained person, not a beginner, not a newbie, and not a rower or something like that. Somebody who's a barbell person, somebody who lifts a lot, doing a 5x5 is nearly impossible at 85%. Okay, and I know somebody will say, well, I've done it before. Okay, fine. But for most people, that is too much volume at 85%. You're going to have to take the load down or build up underneath it or just some sort of a pyramid or whatever. Okay, or drop set or whatever it needs to be. And so, getting enough volume in to make a difference for strength within one session is very difficult. And so the volume in that case isn't enough to warrant, right, waiting another full week in order to do strength again. You're going to have some, the fitness gain that you gained is going to be lost. I'm not saying you go back to where you started, but you missed the opportunity to push up that strength gain and the fatigue was already washed out. So later in the week, you could do another strength workout. Maybe 4 days later, you do another strength workout. And so now you've added more volume. So if you took some of that 5x5 and turned it into a 5x3, now you're doing 15 reps. You maintain the load throughout, which is important for strength. Of course, the intensity is maintained. You didn't have to drop off the load. You left some in the tank. You come back later, do another 15 reps later in the week. That's accumulated volume of 30 reps, right? In this case, repetitions, 30 repetitions for a full week's work at 85%, where if you did it the other way, you did a 5x5 at 85%, you really didn't do 85% for all 5 reps anyway per set. Your 25 reps is hypothetically more like 80% or 77.5% because you had to drop the load. Did you really get as much out of that strength training work as you did? And we could do the same thing with power work. How many good reps of snatching or clean and jerk or whatever could be done in a session? It depends on the athlete, but I mean, let's just say 12 is a good number, at any sort of percentage of the 70s and higher. You could scale it up or down depending on your fitness, of course, but I'm just saying 12. Well, how can you do 30 reps and still have quality? No. And so at that point, you're not really doing anything in terms of like maximal work or quality work. You're not really getting a lot of quality work in at that point. Better to do 12 solid reps at higher load, come back later in the week, do another 12 reps at with the same movement, same exercise, and that's accumulated volume of 24 reps, all of them though at a good percentage that you expect, a good being like, let's say your goal was 80%. You hit 80% the whole time. Where the other way, if you just try to crush, a whole bunch of reps and you're going to hit 80% maybe for 2 or 3 sets, and then it's going to fall off precipitously after that. And so the rest of your work is what some people call junk volume. I don't really like that term because volume does something. It's just not what you want, right? And so, it's just not building power. So a good question, why have smaller bites, if you will? That's the way I like to think of it. Instead of just, doing one hardcore session and recover. It's because the accumulated training volume and the quality of the work that is maintained, I'm talking about quality work here, both the quality of movement and the load that's on the bar are maintained better by taking smaller bites. Okay, this whole frequency versus, this whole frequency debate about is training more frequently better than not? And the answer, for the most part, is yes. Now, there's a practical component that has to be acknowledged there. Not everybody can train, 10 times a week. So I hope that answers your question. Second one, it's a longer question. Why do submaximal work? If the whole idea is to, let's say, get stronger, or get faster, why do any sort of submaximal work? And this is actually a question I had a hard time with for years. So if you're familiar with general strength training programming, high-low, right? High-low. We do a high day and a low day. What's high and what's low? Well, a lot of times with strength work, it's the intensity that we're interested in. So if you think about the size principle of motor recruitment, the different strategies there, you might have a maximal day where you do heavier loads, not to failure. That's a maximal day. And then you might do the second day, could either be a repetition day where you are doing more to failure type of training, or you're doing a speed day. But the conventional was always like, well, you do a maximal day and then you do something that's a little bit lighter, right, than that. So there wasn't a big differentiation. Let's say you did 85% of your max for sets of 3 on Monday, and then you came back and did the same movement, another squat pattern work or whatever it is, but you did you did the same repetition scheme, but instead of 85%, you did 80%. Right? You pulled back the load on it, same volume perhaps, same. I always had a hard time with it too. It's like, what are we doing? Like, let's have a focus. And now the argument here, with even the scheme I just talked about, is that the movement quality matters. So that second day, so the maximal day, it's heavy. That's obviously the stimulus. Still want to move with quality, but the day when it's lighter, that's when the intent to move and the velocity. We've seen this with the explosion of velocity-based training. The intent to move and the purposeful movement and moving as fast as possible with that lighter load indeed can produce strength gains. So there's 2 roads to Rome here. You can either lift really, really heavy weight, crushing blows and go to failure, or you can lighten it up and move with quality, okay? Within reason, move with quality. Now, obviously, doing both is even better. Taking 85% and moving as fast as possible in that same load over time is obviously not going to be 85% anymore, and you're moving the same speed, or you move the same speed and increase the load. Either way, you're getting better movement, okay? So that's the idea of a high-low. Now, I like the idea of a high-low emphasis. So high day would be maximal day. I'm talking about intensity, high in that sense. And so I'm programming off the intensity here, but I think you'll see what I mean in a second. The low day is a volume day, depending on the cycle of the year. And so let's say if it's squat work, I might do my 5x3 on Monday and then come back later, and I might do in a 3x8 in a cluster, 4+4, or something like that. More voluminous, okay? Now, there's times when that second day is a speed day. And so 85% the first day, maximal load, come back later in the speed day, and now we're at 75% doing 10x3, moving as fast as possible. Now, I don't do that as much. If I do anything, I'll do all three. So I'll do, for like a really squat-intensive program, maximal day, speed day, and volume day. I think the point is to answer this question is, what does submaximal work do? In a powerlifter or somebody, it can indeed, this individual asked about, does it help with technique? Yes. In a weightlifter, yes, absolutely helps with technique and timing. Power lifter, technique and timing, all those things are important. It does help with recovery, but I think having an emphasis on what you're doing and making sure the movement quality is still high is very important when doing submaximal work, especially for athletics. For somebody who's just training in general, you can learn new patterns, but I think it's a little bit less about recovery in that point. That it's certainly helpful to push some blood around, but if you're going to do that second session, why not have a variety piece? So what I mean by that is you might do your squat work, max squat work on Monday, and then come back and do leg press for volume on that second day, right? And so volume being even more reps per set, or an extra set, or whatever it might be. So you kind of take that same approach even when you're doing some general training. Somebody's just starting out doesn't have to worry about this high-low stuff necessarily, right? You can just kind of ramp it up over time. But that's a good question. Why do submaximal work? That's a great question. I would ask you that. Why, if somebody's saying, I'm doing this, why? What's the purpose? Well, I'm trying to move the bar as fast as possible. I'm really focused on velocity right now. Fine. I'm really doing a lot more volume right now. I'm trying to get bigger. I'm trying to muscle growth. That's the whole point of volume, is I'm doing a 3x8 to get more muscle growth. I'm doing my maximal day on the other day. Okay. Weightlifter. Well, I'm working on my timing. I'm doing some different position. I'm doing some sort of variant. I'm doing it off the block. I'm doing it from a hang. I'm doing some pocket snatches, whatever it is. I'm trying to get faster. Right? And this movement, like in a pocket snatch where I don't have as much hip to work with, so I got to be quick under the bar. Those are the reasons to do some max. But just to drop the load and push some weights around, I struggle with that too for years when I was doing a lot of training when I was playing football in high school and college. What are we doing on that light day? Why don't we just rest? Like if there's no emphasis, if we're just lifting lesser loads than we did on Monday, well, if the intent to move is there, then you can get something out of it. I think that's what's important. All right, next one. I know this is getting a little long, but why not? Next question. So what is the metric in a heavy, light, medium kind of structure to base that on? So when I talk about high-low days, what's high and what's low? It depends. So if strength is the focus, okay, I mentioned before, a high day, I might be referring to intensity, so 85%, or if we do an RPE or an RER or whatever it is, okay, with a given load, okay, whatever it is, or it could be velocity-based training, that first day is high, meaning the load is high in this case. And then the second day might be low, meaning the load is light in that day. Again, light could be defined as like 55%, 60%, 65% of max. Heavy day was 85, 90%, probably in the 80s. Okay. So you could program it that way. That's kind of how I start, and then it sets up everything else. So obviously then the volume then is going to be inverse. So the maximal day, the volume is low, and the maximal day, or the day later in the week where I might do more volume, right? Do 3x8, whatever. That's going to have a higher volume. So I have a high-low going the opposite way now. Okay. Medium is just that, somewhere in between, 6s, 5s, right? Some reps in there. But the intensity for me starts the process. Then you could calculate load volume or volume load or whatever it may be off of that. Okay. Let me give you an example for like when I program snatch programming. Depending on the type of year, but in a typical week, there'll be the full snatch exercise, okay? Like from the floor, full snatch, all right? Another day might be so that could be, let's just say for this intensity purpose, that's the heaviest thing of the week. So we're going to work up to 85, 90% snatch, full snatch. The variant, I'm going to use a variant on another day. So let's say snatch is first in the week, full. That's the way I set it up. Or there, I know there's max out days, and again, just kind of hang with me. So day 1, we're doing full from the floor, 85, 90%. The second day, I could have a moderate day. So I'm doing some sort of variant. Okay. Doing some sort of variant, like off the block or something like that. They're not on the floor. It's not as stressful overall. So that word stressful is in here. Stressful overall. And I could set the percentage then to say, I only want you to do this at 75%, or even better with a variant, like if it's a power or something, use RPE. So I want the RPE at a 7, because if you say 75% power snatch, that's not 75% of their max. That could be much higher in their power snatch, 1 RM. And so I could use an RPE there to help set that, or if I could set the percentage down, I knew that indeed it was 70%, then 70. And then the last day of the week could be light. It could be a 60% variant. Now I'm doing, like I mentioned before, a pocket snatch or a mid-thigh snatch or a tall snatch or something that has to be light on the bar in nature, right? Just by the load itself has to be lighter in order to accomplish the movement, and it's more about speed. Now you could say you could max out on the pocket snatch, and that could be more intense. Okay, so you could, to differentiate the two, you say 60% on the bar, an RPE of 6, right? It's the same thing. It should feel like a 6. It's 60% of the bar. It should feel light. Don't try to ramp up and max out your pocket snatch, at 100%, and that could be more like an RPE of 8. Well, if it was a full lift. I hope that makes sense. So, using either RPE or the training percentages, you could use RER and something like squatting. You can set the intensity first, and then the volume will follow. All right. You could start with the volume and say, I'm going to have, and I've done this with general clients, is, we're doing a knee dominant exercise like a squat or a leg press or something like that, with 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps. And then later in the week, you're going to do 5 sets of 12 to 14 reps. Right? So much higher volume later in the week. The volume earlier in the week is working a different, we know with bodybuilding type of training and physique, working through a load spectrum is a good idea. And so I like doing things like that all the time. Again, you could reverse them, say 5 sets of 8 by 10 and 4 sets of, but you have to calculate the volumes then to make sure there's a difference in volume, right? One day is a heavier volume, or higher volume. One day is a higher intensity. Okay. So again, you could go at it either way. But that's the idea, right? Some sort of you can't just go, well, the point is you can't go heavy all week. I've tried that. I've tried to hit it hard on every, the variant, let's do a high percentage all the week, and you will smoke yourself and anybody that trains under you. Don't do that. The body doesn't work that way. I always I think in my book I wrote this, I don't remember, it's been a while, but, the body doesn't like to work like this. In steps. It moves in waves, in biological waves. If you look at your blood pressure, right, for example, right, it moves in waves, okay? And so when we train, we should have a similar type of structure, both week to week, within the day, within the week, over the course of a macro. It's not, the only time you can get away with that real rigid step type of method is when somebody's starting out, because you're forcing that step method on their physiology. Underneath, their physiology is doing this, but the swings are so big that they can follow along with those jagged edges. Yeah, but when you get into smaller, people who are trained now, the wave is going to be a lot tighter. And if you take these big stair step sharp edges, the body does not like that. The body likes curves. It doesn't like sharp edges. All right, even in like a taper, it's, exponential taper seems to be a better taper. There's some promise in a step down, but it's not like it doesn't work, but it's better to use an exponential taper. Curves. Maybe I'll make a video about it. It sounds like something I can market. Maybe that's what I call my book, Steps and Curves. Okay, how long can you go in the hole before complete recovery? Good question about, how hard can you go before you, I would say pay the piper. So if you crush somebody's soul, including yours, in training for like 4 weeks, how long do you have to recover? How long is your deload week? If you really got after it and you're well trained, a week may not get it done, right? It may be 14 days. Okay. Depending on what you were doing and how hard you're doing it, that's why I like the smaller bites, if you will, is a hard workout, a light day, you recover it. Yeah, you're accumulating some fatigue over time, but not enough to really interfere with the quality of your work. So you go into the weight room and your legs aren't so dead that you can't push a bar as fast as possible and maintain a certain bar velocity you needed, or hit a load that you should hit at a given, you should hit this load for this rep range at this moment in time. Can you do it? The answer is no. Okay, well, maybe it's just a bad day. You come back and do it again. I still can't do it. You're not recovering enough. Okay, you're not recovering enough. So how long can you go into the hole before you explode? I would want to test that, but some telltale signs that you're getting what's called overreaching is joint pain, certainly sleep disruption, mood disorder, because of usually sleep disruption, and your joints that are cranky. Mood disorder means you're getting crankier, you're not enjoying training, you're getting kind of, short with things, short with people, the training is feeling monotonous, you're not hitting loads like you should, consistently you're not hitting those. That's a good sign that you're in the hole, so to speak. That's how the question was posed. Probably time to back out, right? Probably time to ease off and hit into a deload, okay? Now, you can overreach on purpose. Once you reach that point where you start to notice these changes, I would be very careful on how much further you go. True overtraining is hard to get to, but you don't want to get so deep in an overreaching cycle and burned out that 1, 2, 3 weeks is not going to do it. I mean, I think I used an example in the other question that was posed, when somebody gets burned out. I mean, look at an athlete that actually goes to the Olympic Games. They might take months and months and months and months off. Now, they've been peaked for that moment, and that's a lot of psychological stress they're dealing with too. But the point is that, the more you put into the system, the more stress you put in the system physiologically, psychologically, whatever, the more recovery is going to be required. That's why I like the smaller dosage, if you will. All right. Recommended block lengths 4 to 6 weeks for change of emphasis. So there's a general guideline how to wait before starting a new block of the same type. So in other words, how long should a Mezzo be? It's 4 to 6 is a good range. I've done 2-week Mezzos. It just depends. I think 4 is and for what I do with most people is 4. And it seems to be if we push too much further without any sort of deload, it doesn't have to be a strict deload, but if you push too much further than 4 weeks without a deload, bad things happen. Fatigue ramps quickly. So I've done a 6-week, it's a 7-week cycle where the first 2 weeks are more voluminous. There's a transition week. It's not a deload, but it is a drop in volume and a switch to ramping intensity. A 3-week build, okay? And then the 4th week I've tried on and off with trying that 4th week, and it's hit or miss because that's a lot. It's, coming off of one transition, going 4 week, that's a lot of fatigue. And so if you time it right, you can get a nice rebound off of that. But that's a 5 to 6 week cycle, and I've had some success with that in between meets, for example. I did with weightlifters. But that 4th week is you really got to pay attention. If somebody's dragging anchor going into that 3rd week, and you want to go to that 4th one, it might be better to deload, okay? If you're trying to do a competition, certainly have this planned out ahead of time so you're not guessing on a taper because you're going to be constricted by when the meet is. But if you're just lifting, it's okay to read your body. I think, I think it was Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan to get punched in the mouth. I mean, sometimes we get married to programs so tightly that we can't get away. Like, this isn't working. I'm getting smashed in the ground, right? I've heard many people try small off, right, and they don't make it, or German volume training, or Bulgarian training, right, You just realize it is not working. You don't have the recovery, you don't have the time, there's other pharmaceutical help that you don't have, whatever it is, right? You just can't do it, and that's okay to admit it and move away from that before you get crushed. So I like 4 weeks. I've always liked 4 weeks. I've tried others. I'm not saying it can't work. Sometimes you have to do 2 weeks, whatever it is, but I really like 4 weeks. It seems if you're pushing hard in those first 3 weeks, you have a nice bump that usually happens in week 2. In my experience, that's where you see the most progress is week 2, and week 3 it kind of wanes. And then week 4, depending on how you structure the program, of course, but that's just how I've structured over the years. 2 is a good one, 3 is kind of holding on and seeing some smaller gains, and then 4 is like we're getting diminished returns at this time, so I might as well rest. Let's see. I think I hit all of them. Anything you're reading right now, strength conditioning or personal development you find worthwhile? I try to put all the books up that I'm reading recently. I've read a lot of books over the years. I think I mentioned an Instagram post years ago, an exercise physiology book. I don't know where it is anymore. I can't remember the author. It's terrible. It's a book I still review. It's one of the best books for concepts, especially with strength conditioning. If I remember, I'll look it up and do a book review on it because it's a fantastic book. I've read a lot of phys books, taught phys for years, and by far it's the best phys book I've ever read. I think it should be a resource for any strength conditioning coach, to be honest. My book reviews, I always say conscientious or conscious coaching. I think it's conscious coaching. Bartholomew, I think that's who it was. You think I don't remember names of books very well, but I remember the book and what was in it. And that's a fantastic book. If you're if you're in strength conditioning at all as a coach, I highly recommend you get that book. And it has nothing to do with programming. It has everything to do with personalities. It has to do with managing the person. A very important coaching book. But otherwise, any of your general anatomy book, always good. I try to review anatomy book every year. Has a Neiman has a great kinesiology book. It's one of those books too that's falling apart because I've looked through it so many times. Great pictures. It's just a movement anatomy book. I can't remember what it's called anymore. It's purple. That's all I know. But I review that. Joe Ken's book I reviewed. That's a great book. The tier method. You don't have to even like the tier method. It's just a way of organizing programming that I found valuable. Any of the Catalyst literature on weightlifting, Louie's books and Westside Barbell, knowing that both of these guys aren't perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. Not near the expertise of these two coaches. I'm just saying you don't have to drink all the Kool-Aid, but they have some great information in there worth thinking about and considering. The on-target publications are worth taking a look at. Some of the authors there are fantastic, including Dr. McGill. Those are all great resources. I'm looking at my shelf here. I got rid of a lot of my books. I had too many. I'm kind of like a book hoarder. The old book by Stone and Dr. Stone and Sands. That's an old book, but it's a good one. Look up Ultimate Athlete Concepts. A lot of the advanced books. Just keep in mind those are advanced books. Like if you're, that's for advanced athletes. But there's some of the books like Bondarchuk, for example, or Surin block training book. Of course, Super Training to some degree. These are all good books in terms of theory, but you have to ask yourself, do you need that much? I don't know. I like Christian Thibodeau's books. I think they're interesting. I think they've got some really cool concepts in them. It's the Black Book of Strength Training or something. He's got a couple of them. I used to have both of them. I don't know what I did with them. But really good books. So hopefully that's helpful. A lot of good strength conditioning books. A lot of them repeat themselves over and over again. So do I. So, any good coach steals from other coaches, with permission, like you buy their literature and you use their stuff. That's the whole point. Okay. I think that's it. I think I got everything. I know it's a long video, but I wanted to hit all these questions. They're good questions. They're questions that are very common. If I miss something, let me know. I'm going to send this video link to the author of this email. But maybe you've had those same questions as well. All right. I'll cut it off here. I know I'm getting long. You probably saw 30 minutes and didn't even watch anyway. So, be sure to check out my other videos though. I'll be posting more as we go along. You can check out my Patreon page and look for that book coming out. I will recommend the next one. It's not going to be perfect by any means. I just enjoy writing. I hope you find it interesting. I'm going to price it like $3,000 though. So, I only need to sell like maybe 10 or so. So, if anybody wants to drop $3,000 on a book, look for that. No, I'm just joking. Like 10 bucks. All right. We'll see you next video.